company, the food needs to be transported, so then it's ideal to combine it maybe with a company that is active in logistics. Sometimes you have a very traditional company doing very traditional things, and then we try to combine it, for example, with a young startup to bring in new ideas. So really impressed what we really try is to combine these, to combine interesting companies, to buy those companies, and obviously to invest in them, and in the end, also make money with it. The overlapping part is the project management, so very often we try to get public money for it, we try to get money from the state for it, and then we also try to find investors who are able, who are capable, and who are interested to invest in those companies. And that's the really interesting part, and that is where Presto is different from some technologies. In this, my colleague Atanas is the CEO, and the COO. We work here also with an international team. We work with a team from Austria, from Bulgaria, from Korea, and from South America, and try all together to support those companies and those startups. I would like to briefly mention the project with which we came here and actually supported our trip. Was there any presentation before about the Increase project? Did you hear about the Increase project before or not at all? Was there anything shared with you about Increase? No? So the Increase project, that's the Erasmus Plus project, the project in which frame we are doing this, and with which frame I'm also teaching. And this is actually quite an interesting project where we mainly deal with pedagogical approaches, different pedagogical approaches which my colleagues, in this case it's my colleagues from the university, are bringing over here to Vietnam and trying to combine it with what your professors already know. Why I'm putting on the slide and why does actually this event today fit so nicely into this? Because with these skills, we are actually trying to increase the value of the education for society and for the industry. And we are trying also to help either through direct presentations, as I'm doing now, but also through the skills that we're giving to teachers to simply better prepare students like all of you for the job market, for the national job market, for the international job market, and with this help obviously the economy and the industry as well. This is from our last trip which we had in Austria. So this is our whole team with also your colleagues here from your university. But let's start. As you saw from my slides, I have a background in project management. And I think project management is a really important thing that you can apply nearly to all areas, and also obviously to startup in business management. Let's admit it, most of my approaches when I created my own startups, but also when I'm supporting startups, national and international, I'm using my project management approaches. And this is really why I would like to advertise project management quite strongly to you, because it's a very, very important part. It's a very important step. So anyone who can get an education in project management, I highly recommend it. When we look at project management, the standard textbook definitions, so when you look at the textbook to see how projects are defined, then you can see that has a lot to do with startups, had a lot to do with young companies. Projects are usually defined as something complex. So there are some complex tasks, some complex activities. And that's actually the same that is with startups, right? It's very complex at the beginning. Because that's what a startup is all about. It's a young company, it's usually a new team, it's a new idea, it's a little bit chaotic. It's very complex, and you are trying, and if you're a manager or your colleagues, you're trying to manage this chaos. Projects, but also startups, and this is sometimes forgotten, these are social systems. It's something social. We are social beings, right? Once you form your team, once you form a team around the people that would like to work together for a startup, that's a social system. And that's very often forgotten that this also needs to be managed. And we know it quite well. There can be conflicts in teams, there can be conflicts in startups, and that might hinder the success of a really good idea, of a really good startup, because the issue is within the team. So very often this is unfortunately forgotten, that anything we do, any startup we create, any company that is there, is a social system that has to be managed. The ideas of startups, same as the ideas of projects, are usually quite unique. I mean, this is what makes a startup. You're having a unique new idea, you have a new thing that you would like to try out, you have this new thing that you think is the best for the market or for a certain part of the market. So this uniqueness, this is also something that startups and projects do have in common. Projects usually have a high importance, right? Companies, universities, they do these projects or do projects to have progress, to have a certain impact. So you're never starting a project just for fun. You're always starting a project for a certain purpose. You would like to create either new lectures, you would like to have a research result, you would like to create something new. The same as with companies, and the same as with startups. You really have these startups because it is of strategic importance for your life. You will invest a lot of time in there, so a startup has a really big impact on your life. It has quite huge strategic importance. And usually, projects are short duration. So for example, our project will last about 3.5 years. With startups, I mean, you might now think that I'm telling it's of short duration because startups go bankrupt. It's true. A lot of startups also go bankrupt. In Austria, 1 to 2 out of 10 startups make it. The rest disappear. However, this is not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to that the moment you have managed to establish your business model, the moment you found out that what you're trying to do that actually works, from that moment on you're not a startup anymore. From that moment on, it is a company. That is an established enterprise, it's not a startup anymore. When you Google the definition of startup, that's usually when you're still iterating, when you're still working on your business process, because you're simply not sure if this will work. This is why I'm saying this is also short to medium duration, and that's why you would like to convert in the end into a permanent structure, ideally that brings you money, that brings you fame, whatever the company is. Now, when you look at project management processes, and you look at startup management processes, you will actually find more or less this process. And this is a process I would like to highly recommend to you if you have a great idea, if you at least think through it. It might be your guideline for a couple of months, it might be only your guideline for half a day. So, however, I would really recommend when you think of creating something that you go for these steps. And I think you can all relate to the first one. I think every startup in the world, they had some sort of vision. There was something they wanted to change. There was somebody who had great skills into something, somebody who saw a problem they would like to overcome. I have this, for example, in one of my companies. They are dealing with cancer research. So they are doing cancer research, and the reason why they wanted to do it, and the vision behind them was that their CEO had cancer himself. So he was extremely motivated to create a startup that helps battling cancer worldwide. And that might happen also to complete other areas. Startups do not have to come from the academic sector. There might be startups that come from the art sector. We've seen before the dancing group, right? I wouldn't say that they are necessarily a startup, but probably there was also somebody who had a vision at the beginning and who wanted to create that. So startups can come from different areas, however it always starts with some sort of vision. However, vision is something in your head. Vision is something that maybe nobody sees, you're discussing it maybe with your family, your friends, your business partners. Once you have established your vision, you have to break it down to concrete goals. And this is really, really important. This is important for you. This is important for your maybe investors to understand what are your real goals. And we usually divide the goals into two different parts. We have some sort of strategic goals. So what is your strategy? What do you want to achieve as a strategic point? When I think of this startup that deals with cancer research, so their strategic goal obviously is battling cancer in a certain area. In this case, for example, it was breast cancer. They wanted to battle breast cancer. So their strategic goal was to perform research, to perform development activities in exactly this area. And then you have to break it down to very concrete goals. Goals that you can achieve on a daily basis. And you can Google that if you like. There's this so-called SMART approach. Probably a lot of you have heard about this. Probably it has been taught to you. However, it's really a nice and interesting approach. That's why I mentioned it. It's nothing new. It's been there for a while. SMART means specific, measurable, accountable, reachable, and what was T again? Timely. So it means your goals have to be extremely specific. Because as I mentioned, startups are specific, they're unique. So you have obviously very specific goals. And this is very important when you formulate it, that you make it as specific as possible. If you just say, well, our company wants to do research and this and that, that's probably not enough. If you're very specific and saying, we're working on exactly this area, this is what we would like to achieve, that will be our product. Be as specific as possible. And it's extremely important that the achievement of those goals are measurable. So if you have goals and you cannot measure if you achieved it, that's horrible. Because then you really don't know if you were successful. So make sure anything that you're defining, no matter for your startup, for your project, that the achievement can somehow be measured so that there's a certain result. That might be a product, that might be a certain outcome, that might be if you would like to create the next new platform, that the goal is a certain number maybe of people that are registered on your platform, that are maybe a certain number of people that are using your product. So it doesn't always have to be a tangible output. It can also be something that you're saying, I would like to reach a certain number of people. Coming back, for example, to the group that was dancing here before, they could say our goal is that in a year we would like to entertain 100,000 people. So that would be, for example, their goal. So make it measurable, because that can be measured. It's very important that you agree on those goals in your team. We have this quite often that one or two people in a startup, they create this fantastic vision, they create these fantastic goals, but the team doesn't agree to it. And then if the team doesn't agree to it, it makes it really difficult to work all together towards the same direction. So make sure that people who understand your goals and make sure that they also agree to it. And then, so that you don't get desperate, it's really, really important that you can really reach your goal. If your goals are not realistic, you can create the most beautiful goals in the world, you have the most beautiful vision in the world. If it's not reachable, your startup will fail. So you have to make sure you have to assess if what you've just defined, if that can actually be really reachable. That's very important. And that's mainly related to the finances, it has to be timely. So you have to have some sort of timeline to it. Because believe me, when you're stuck, sooner or later, you will run out of time, you will run out of money. So when you think about it, also in your head, say that there's a certain time to it. You would like to achieve your goals within 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, so that you have this defined somewhere. And I really recommend to write these things down. One thing where presenting in students are often confused is the so-called non-objective. Now you might ask, why do I have to define a non-objective? What's the sense of this? It helps you, and it helps maybe your investors or your business partners to understand what you don't want to do. It might be that there are certain things where you're clearly saying, that's what I don't want to do. We have this, for example, with certain products. You would like to have a new innovative food product, for example, and that's the goal. However, you do not want to produce it yourself. You maybe just want to license it to somebody. You're looking for a company that's actually buying the license from you and then somebody else produces it. However, if you are telling me now, hey, I'm producing this new food product, there might be my misunderstanding that you now create a new food factory and you start producing it. That's why it is really important to define also this non-objective, to say, well, that's where we stop. We go to here, and then we give the license to a company, and they start producing. I mean, if you think about it, this is really important for any project, for any activities, for any business, that you know what is also clearly not part of it. So I can really highlight this is something really important also to think about what is actually not part of it. There's this thing which I just wanted to mention. It's called objects of consideration. It's an additional thing. It's things that you would like to consider in addition that goes beyond just objectives. So this could simply be, let's think about it. Let's think, for example, you're creating a platform. You would like to create the next LinkedIn, you would like to create the next Instagram, whatever you would like to create. And then you might just think of the social aspects of it. You might just think of the videos, you might just think of the community. However, it might also create additional points where you build up digital skills in your team, where you build up, where you buy computers, where you buy storage space. Although this is not directly related to your company, this is something that has to be considered. Although you would never write in your objectives, my objective is to buy storage space in a facility. However, it's something that has to be considered. So anything that you think for your business is really important, but it's not in the objectives, please put it in these objects of consideration. The team. I'm always struggling a little bit where in this list I put the team. Because the team sometimes is there from the very beginning. The team is there when the vision is there. It might be the vision of the whole team. But sometimes also the team might develop. The team might develop once you've defined your objectives, because then you found out, oh, I need an additional technician, I need maybe a financial manager, I need maybe a person that is doing our graphics, that is doing our videos. So team is something that develops over the time and that might change over the time. So that's why I'm recommending to assess this at different stages of the planning of your business. If it's there completely from the beginning, wonderful, but assess if you have all the skills in your team. And when you discover that certain skills are maybe missing, then it's up to you to decide, is it so important, are those skills so important that we hire somebody else? Or if this is something that I can give away. Very often, for example, video creation, graphics, certain research, marketing and so on, this can be outsourced. You hire somebody to do it for you, then they are part of your external team, but not part of the internal team. But you might say, our startup is so important, marketing is so extremely important, we need this internal. Then you want to hire somebody that works with you in your team on this certain aspect. A very important point is also milestones. I guess each and everyone know what a milestone originally was. A milestone originally was in the Roman Empire. You know, in Italy, you have your Italian colleague. In the Roman Empire, milestones were stones that were lying on the side of the street, right? And when you were traveling and you reached this stone, you first of all knew that you're on the right track, because you wanted to reach the stone, and if you had an idea in your mind how long you wanted to take to get there, then you also know if you're on time. And that's the same thing in startups and in projects. You are setting certain milestones in your project, in your startup, when you say after 6 months, that's where I want to be. After 6 months, I want to have this result. After 6 months, I want to have my first prototype. After 6 months, I want to have my first 5 clients. After 6 months, I would like to, I don't know, make $1 million. We won't make $1 million after 6 months. But to set these milestones, because only then you can assess if you are on the right track and if you're on time. So, in addition to the objectives and the non-objectives, please also set these really important parts, these really important points in your project, these milestones. And how many milestones you set, or how often you set them, that's really up to you. Some startups have to set milestones because they don't know if their business works, right? So they might come from research, they might be in cancer research, they might be in some other research, and they really don't know if the results that they will achieve will actually be there and they can make money with it. So they might say, we have to do now 2 years of research, and after these 2 years of research, we have a milestone where we decide if with this results, we can actually create a business. With this results, we can make money, or you cannot make money. So this is really important. So it might be that at those milestones, some startups simply have to stop because they found out, but they simply cannot create money, they cannot create enough revenues with what they are trying to do with their business. The next term I just put there like this, activity plans. This might be anything. I am not interfering with that. That might be your to-do list. That might be any tool you're using to write down your activities. There are so many tools, there are so many approaches out there how you list activities. I'm not giving you any advice on this. I guess you have managed your studies so far, you know how to do to-do lists, you know how to plan your activities. Just make sure you do the same way when you create a startup. Same goes actually with time plans. I guess you're also capable of planning your time. An important part is the resource planning. The resource planning can be quite complex. It depends very much on what your startup is doing. It might be really straightforward. You have a very simple startup, easy to plan the resources because it might only be finances. However, as a resource is also equipment. You might need certain research equipment, you might need material, you might need machines, you might need expertise. Anything that you need comes under resources. And anything that you need for your startup, that needs to be somehow planned. So when you're going through this planning procedure, think about what you really need. What are the resources? Is it digital resources? Is it physical resources? Is it financial resources? Whatever you require, you somehow have to plan from the beginning on. That's why the resource plan is on it. But as this is so specific, I'm not going to present you a resource plan because it might be very, very specific for your individual idea and for your individual startup. And one thing which I recommend is also to think about the risk at the beginning. Risk planning is something very complex. There are tons of experts out there that do risk planning for the financial sector, for the startup sector, and so on. I'm not expecting you to be able to do that. However, you should always think about what could be the risks of your venture. What could be the risks of your activities? Is that a research risk? Is that maybe a financial risk? Is that maybe a risk that another company, another startup has the same idea and might overtake you, might be faster than you, and then maybe brings a product earlier to the market? So risk planning is also something really important. However, we all know this can actually go in any direction because I think not a single startup, for example, had COVID on their list, right? This was a risk nobody thought of. Because why should we, right? So risk planning has its limitations. Still, it's very important to do. And when you have these things, you have more or less the basis for either a project plan or for your business plan. And also when it comes to business plans, I don't know if you've ever had a look at the type of business plans that are out there. I'm not gonna recommend a certain business plan because you can simply look it up on the internet, you can look it up anywhere. There are so many different business plans in there which are more or less covering the same thing. So it's up to you to decide which one fits to you. One thing that I would like just to advertise to you, maybe some have heard of it. If you've not heard of it, you can look it up in the internet. It's this so-called business model canvas, which is more or less on this one slide covering a lot of the things I just told you before. It's a nice tool to start the planning. It's definitely not the tool that will end up with a full business plan for you, but it's a really nice tool to start the planning. Because when you look at it, let's look at it together. It includes the main aspects of your venture, of your business. You have the key partners on the one side, so you have the people you are working with, maybe the organization you're working with. You have the key activities. I told you very important to plan the key activities. You have the resources in there. You have your clients in there. You have how you would like to make money with it in there. And you have more or less also the value. What are you actually creating? What is the additional value? Why is your project so unique? Why is your startup so unique? And all these things are here just simply in one plan. Have a look at it. There are also beautiful videos on YouTube of it. I'm not going to continue on this anymore because I could do a whole session just on this one. But if you need a plan to start planning your business with and you have nothing in your mind so far, have a look at the business model canvas. It's really supporting to structure your ideas and to summarize your ideas. And if you go beyond that, it's called the value proposition canvas. It's an additional supporting tool where you primarily focus on what is the benefits that you with your company are creating for your clients. And that might be all sort of different benefits. You have to analyze your clients, what do you want to do for them, what is the issues that are solving for them. And also for this, not going into further details. If you want further details, we can discuss it afterwards. However, I recommend that you read into this, have a look at the business model canvas, and have a look at the value proposition canvas. And at least this is a great starting point if you need certain plans for your startup. Now this part was about how do I create this plan, how am I creating this plan. And a plan, let's be honest, it's just a plan. It's nothing more, it's just something that you have planned. It's also sometimes an agreement. As I mentioned, you have to agree between your team, your business partners. Sometimes your plan can be also used as a presentation to your investors. And then guess what? This whole thing hits reality. And then you see how good your plan was. And as I mentioned before, we had COVID before, we have an economic crisis. Believe me, every plan changes. So it's not a problem that plans changes. A problem is only if you never had a plan. Because a plan is something you can assess against. If you say, I want to have this goal reached in 12 months, and then something changes, you at least remember, why? There was this 12-month plan of mine. Now COVID hits, that's why I had no clients, so I had to prolong it. I'm reaching it maybe in 24 months. But you know and compare it to your original plan. So it is absolutely no problem if there are changes in your plan. Believe me, in all our plans are changes. Also in our project here, the project, as I said, is somewhere between 3 to 3.5 years. I'm saying it this way because originally it was 3 years. But because of COVID, we will most likely have to prolong it for 6 months. So every project has deviations. And when you Google the word deviation, deviation is a neutral term. It doesn't necessarily mean something bad. A deviation can be negative, however it can be also positive. It can be also an opportunity. And I guess also here in Vietnam, we had it in Europe, but also here in Vietnam, you had companies, you had started, you had people that found ways to benefit from the COVID crisis. They found ways of creating mass companies, they found ways of creating business delivery services. So crisis, issues, deviations can be a real opportunity. Not for every startup, not for every business. For some businesses, COVID killed the business. But for some, it can be a real boost, it can be a real opportunity. And that's why it's so important to differentiate between crisis management, so when a change that happens is actually a threat for your startup, a threat for your idea, and opportunity management. And anytime a deviation occurs, I highly recommend that you start thinking of if this could be an opportunity for you. If this could be an opportunity